Kale Pesto Pizza. Pesto makes a great pizza topping, and this kale version is a healthy alternative to the traditional recipe. Handmade dough is a simple and very delicious way to prepare. Give it a try, and you're sure to agree. Hey friends, I've got a fantastic recipe for you today. I'm going to be showing you how to make a pesto pizza from scratch. And I'm going to be using the kale pesto that I demonstrated in a previous video. So I'll include a link in the description for the pesto itself, which you can check out later. But for now, I'm going to go ahead and get started on my dough so it has time to rise. To begin, we will need a large mixing bowl, and then I've got some unbleached bread flour. This has a higher protein content than regular all-purpose flour and makes a superior bread product. With that, I will be using 1 packet of active dry yeast, a teaspoon of salt, and I've got 2 cups of water here at room temperature, but I won't be using all of it, only just as much as needed. I'm going to scoop 3 cups of the bread flour into my mixing bowl. Then I add the teaspoon of salt, the packet of active dry yeast, and then I give it a good stir. After that, I'm going to begin adding the water in small amounts and making sure that it's fully incorporated. Once the dough gets a little bit difficult to mix, I keep adding a small amount of water at a time. I want the final dough to be very workable and more on the dry side rather than being too sticky. This is going to make it much easier for rolling out into our pizzas. Once the dough begins to scrape the bowl so that it's almost clean, I'm going to flour my work surface, making sure to get it on my hands, and then finish by kneading it for about 5 to 10 minutes. I'm going to roll the ball back and forth in my hands, and then use a motion where I flatten it and then fold it over itself again and again. As I'm working it, it's going to pick up the flour off of the table, so I can add more as needed and continue going for about the full 5 to 10 minutes. I always end up doing it on the lesser side, about 5 minutes total. After the full 5 minutes, I'm going to shape it into a ball and use it to pick up all the leftover flour on the table. It's midsummer and my kitchen is quite warm, so I'm just going to shape this into a ball and then put the bowl right over the top and allow it to rise. While this is happening, I put my baking steel into the oven and set it at its highest temperature. And then I'm going to leave this to sit for about 40 to 60 minutes. It's now 1 hour later, and it's time to check on my dough. It looks like it has definitely doubled in size, which is exactly what I'm looking for. I'm going to punch out all the holes and give it a couple of folds just to bring it back together. At this point, I'm going to shape it into a ball again, and then cut it in half so that I can form 2 pizzas with this recipe. I'm going to shape each half again into a ball and then put it to the side. So now I've got a floured work surface, my kale pesto from before, and a bowl of shredded mozzarella cheese. So now it's time to make our first pizza. Pound out one of the dough balls, and then using a floured rolling pin, begin rolling it out into a large circle. This can take a little bit of time depending on how your dough turned out, whether it's too dry, too hydrated, what type of flour you use. All these different reasons can affect the quality of your dough. So I'm just going to play with it for a little bit until it turns out the way I'm looking for. Now that my dough is looking nice, I'm going to grab my pizza peel. This is what I will use to slide it into the oven for baking. I begin by coating it with some semolina flour. You can see that the semolina rolls around easily rather than matting together like regular white flour. This is going to help the pizza slide right off and onto my baking steel. I carefully transfer the dough right on top of the peel, and then I'll build my pizza right on top of that. I begin by spreading out a nice layer of the kale pesto. I want to come right up to, but not overlapping, the edge. Then I give it a good sprinkle of mozzarella cheese. I'm not going to go too heavy with the cheese, since there's already cheese inside the pesto itself. And now you can see how easily the dough slides on that semolina. I'm going to carefully throw it into the oven. And then all it has to do is bake for around 7 to 10 minutes. I've got my oven at its hottest setting, so the pizza is going to bake up crisp, tender. Now that's a good looking pizza. I think it deserves a thumbs up. My second pie didn't come out as good. It stuck a little bit to the peel and then folded as I was trying to put it into the oven. This made the shape a little bit weird, but it tastes just as good. Now we're ready to cut and serve. I'm cutting my pizza into 6 serving pieces. Now take a look at that. It's absolutely amazing. And this is the part where my self-control gets put to the test.
It's so good!
And it really is. I'm not exaggerating here. Since my second pie was a little misshapen, I'm gonna cut it into strips and then into squares. Either way, it tastes just as good. This truly is an exceptional pizza recipe. The dough is just tender and flavorful, plus the way that the garlic and the cheese and the olive oil interact with each other. It's just amazing. I highly recommend you try it. And while you're at it, why don't you try out some of the other videos on my channel? And consider subscribing so you're always the first to know whenever I've got something new for you to see. Thanks and enjoy!